young. That is brilliant, Beth. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's talk to Christian Watson. Christian's the host of Pensive Politics podcast, a political writer, and joins me now. We're not doing COVID today, Christian, by the way.
Well, that's a relief.
Yeah. So talk to me. I mean, look, I've been talking through the show about slavery. It's a program called Enslaved. It's got Samuel L. Jackson, the man who played Shaft. You know his story. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
But also in Django, he played the best house whatever that I've ever seen in the world, an absolute and total sellout of monumental proportions, right? So he knows a little bit about this. An 11-year-old I've got. Tell me what your thoughts are about teaching about slavery, watching it and understanding it, Christian.
Well, I think in a lot of those, productions that you mentioned, they tend to come from a particularly slanted point of view. I think that if we're going to teach anyone, especially people as impressionable as kids, about slavery, you have to teach it to them in context without an agenda. Or if you do have an agenda, the agenda should be to simply tell them the truth, not tell them what might satisfy your political biases or what you might perceive.
Give me the idea of what would be an agenda in teaching a black child about slavery. What would be an agenda?
Well,
give me an example.
Yeah, for example, there is a project going on in America right now, funded by the New York Times, which basically teaches people that slavery, the product of slavery, has not ended years ago. It's continuously going on right now, and that black individuals are disadvantaged because of that, and so on and so forth.
Well, it is.
That's more so.
Well, it is.
Well, and that's you can debate that, but there are a wide variety of historians and scholars who don't agree with that assertion, and to present it as actual truth is to do a disservice to the actual spirit of academic inquiry.
Well, academic inquiry should then entail the fact that people who were released from being slaves were then taken up for being vagrants. That isn't an exact, they didn't get any of the land. We didn't finish paying for slavery until 2015. Much of my city, the city that I work and love and live in, it is built on the backs of slaves, and yet they were never recompensed.
Well, I think that we have to understand, again, we have to put things in context, and this is kind of my point. When you kind of don't have a linear view of time, you think that time is continuously going one way or the other, you're going to relive the ills of what happened in past contexts without actual, context or substantiation to believe they are continually happening. So, yes, a lot of places across the Western world were built with slave labor. That's a undisputed fact. But the true question is, does that fact prevent or manifest negatively in the lives of black Americans today in a manner that materially stops them from being able to succeed and flourish where their ancestors couldn't? I don't think so.
Yes.
I'm not so sure.
Funny, it's just coincidentally, I got sent something today, and it was it's like post-traumatic stress disorder is what we say. But this is what was being described as post-traumatic slave disorder. I thought, this isn't. I don't know if you've heard about that, but basically, it's about black people, let's say women, putting down particularly their boys. He's no good. He's stupid. He's whatever. And it isn't something that happens in Africa, but it happens in America in a particular way. And the reason that it happened in America was because if he was too big, if he was too bright, too clever, or too mandingo-ish, he would be slaved, and that mother would lose her child.
Well, so post-traumatic slave disorder is an interesting academic theory by Dr. Joy McGrew, and I have listened to her lectures, and I have tried to understand it. I think, again, this is a part of the problem in not seeing time as going one way or another. I think we have a tendency to chalk up a lot of propensities and activities of African Americans today to being a result of a period long past. I think that, I don't know if it is true that black boys are disproportionately put down by their parents. I would need to see some data for that in America, but I do know every country and all black people and any ethnicity in any country do indeed have their own idiosyncrasies. Now, whether they're a product of slavery or not, it's a little bit of a stretch in my mind.
Well, you know the great thing about this conversation. I would love to debate with you and reason on the podcast, but we'll come back to this because we'll talk about. Because I was talking about it and framing it in a specific of how I teach my children, what I teach my children, what is age appropriate. But there is a broader, I guess, the broader conversation with you, Christian, is about reparations, and that would be a fascinating conversation. I think I'm only leaving because I have to get one more caller, and we've got literally 3 minutes. So let's try. Iamide, how are you?
I'm okay, thanks. I'm okay. I just caught the tail end of the discussion and had to ask what the topic.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to that very short, abbreviated interview on BBC Radio London. Again, this is one of hopefully many interviews that will continue to further my career aspirations, which is simply to become a public intellectual and or political commentator, although I think both of those are sort of mutually compatible. In our current political era, I want to be the voice for ideas of individualism, of liberty, of adherence to the tradition of freedom, of limited government, of personal autonomy, of higher order values that guide the creation of things. And a part of me doing that and a part of me being that is engaging in interviews like this, my friends. Now, this interview, I think that the host and I were speaking on the same wavelength, but at different rates. So I think that I should have been talking a little bit more directly to what he was saying, but it's important to understand exactly what he was saying. This host was essentially saying, should I teach my kid about slavery? Which is fine. I don't mind that whatsoever. That's actually great. Everyone should know about slavery. I think everyone should be able to understand bad things, because how else do we estimate something's badness, or if it's bad, if there is not a sort of dualistic example existing in our heads? I cannot know what good is if I do not know what bad is, because good without bad is just a concept that is unquantifiable. I can't know what light is without knowing what dark is. But the best thing is, these concepts that give us a prism into understanding the world, I can get them independently so long as I have something to differentiate them by. So, for example, this bottle is empty. If there was no such thing as this bottle being full, I wouldn't have anything to differentiate this bottle by. It would just be a bottle. But there's such a thing as that. And so it's important to be able to do that, but we must avoid agendas, my friends. We must avoid, distorting the truth with our political perceptions. And what a lot of people do these days when they talk about slavery or race, they distort the truth of our human being and the truth of historical circumstances with their political aspirations. They sort of, as the ancient texts say, they bring down imaginations and try to manifest them in reality, but these imaginations are not good. So the Jesse Jacksons of the world, the Al Sharptons of the world, the Sean Kings of the world, the DeRay McKessons of the world, these people consistently tell me that because I'm a black individual, I am oppressed, but I entirely reject that because I understand the condition of my humanity. I understand just how special and precious that I and every other person on this earth is, regardless of their skin color. I understand these things, and this is the truth by which we should convey the historical occurrences of slavery, not the false idea that we are all, as black individuals, inheritors of an ugly legacy, a destitute legacy that will lead us to nowhere but ruin unless we decide to embrace wokeism or we decide to embrace false enlightenment. No, my friends, reject the false enlightenment. Blaze forth your own path in this world and let no one stop you. As the great Jack Sparrow said,
take what you can. Give nothing back.
As always, my friends, I love you. Thank you for listening, supporting, subscribe, like, comment, share, and most importantly, my brothers and sisters, stay pensive.